So we will call the meeting to order. Peggy, can you give us a roll call?
Mr. Gutterson?
Present.
Mr. Hartline?
Present.
We have a guest today who's with us.
Welcome.
And can we get a approval of the minutes from the February 13th meeting?
So moved.
I will second.
Perfect. You two are both in attendance. I appreciate it.
Yep.
And then I will jump into the presentation deck, and so give me 1 second.
Second, can we approve the agenda?
Yeah, motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss that?
It's all right.
Thank you, Peggy. Okay, can you confirm you're seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Then please speak up because I can't see anybody as we go through this. If there's any questions. Our mission, vision, and beliefs focus on collaboration and communication norms, the agenda, sort of as summarized here. We'll go through the financial update. We have some budget discussion items. We sent out as requested the RFP for broker services, and we'll discuss that. And then informational items, and we won't have any items for approval at the next committee of the whole meeting. So on with the financial update. We are, I think we are very well aligned, potentially nervously too aligned to what our budget is or what our budget was. So we're tracking very well. We did receive the Social Security reimbursement for the first and the second quarter, as we had discussed at our last meeting. There is a timing difference when you look at that middle section with the state revenue, and that's the timing. We got the revenue in February 28th, and it was booked March 3rd, that next Monday. So that without that number is in line for FY25. On the revenue side, we've discussed the accelerated access payment, which was included in our budget, which is really driving the difference on the federal side. Overall, general fund year-to-date revenues are $1,114,859, which is about $1.3 million more than we received this time last year, and we've accounted for roughly 76.5% of our budgeted revenue. The difference lies in the increase in local taxes, driven primarily due to the incremental tax increase. The decrease in state sources, as I shared, is really the timing difference. The basic ed and special ed funding came in on Friday, February 28th, and were booked Monday, March 1st. My apologies for that. I'll have to be tighter to that. And the federal number is our title and our accelerated access number. Any questions?
No.
Seeing none. This slide we've shared before. It's updated, but the order doesn't change much in terms of our sources of funding, and the overwhelming majority, obviously, coming from real estate taxes. I did, as we all probably do, we read the news and we listen to the news, and as they talk about the Federal Department of Education. And whatever happens to that, it's always important that, that we recognize and understand if federal funding goes away, local funding goes up. Just to make sure that that's sort of understood in that process, right? That lack of federal funding is a negative to homeowners in terms of their share, unless that money goes from the federal government to the state and passed as a pass through. But that is a critical component that we need to just sort of maintain an awareness of. On the expense side, year-to-date expenses are $88 million through February 28th, which is $6.3 million more than this time last year. The key drivers haven't changed much, if at all, from our earlier discussions. They're really in our special ed contracted services with the IU. The personnel services and salaries, primarily driven by the contract that was approved. As we've shared, right, that is an additional $2.5 million this year and every year going forward. And supplies. And as I mentioned last month, I think the projected supply total, as you can see in the graph below, it's a little smaller. We're much more in line with a very small variance. So I expect that to be mostly timing in terms of how the expenses were procured and when all of that happened. Any questions on the expense side?
Not really.
No.
Okay, thank you. As we look at the full year forecast, right, I think we have a positive variance on the revenue side, partly due to the state PCCD grant that we received, as well as some federal carryover of ESSER funding for $400,000. That's money that we included in our closeout, but wasn't done until the FY24. So we did it over the summer, as we discussed, I think earlier, when we procured the walkie-talkies and a number of other items that we closed out our ESSER grant with. So those numbers are there. The expense side, we are within $78,000, $79,000 of the budget currently, and a positive bottom line of $647,000. We continue to evaluate the benefits, both the medical and the RX, as we did make changes. Those changes became effective, as you know, November 1st, so we're still working through that. We had a meeting earlier this week with Divot in looking at their final look numbers. Our plan there, we continue to be, we are either the largest or the second largest single entity in the Divot program, which has its sort of unique benefits and challenges. Their increase on the medical side is less than 3%, but the increase expected on the prescription side is over 10 or 12%. We continue to face the same challenges, and I don't think we're necessarily alone in those challenges with regard to, 1% of our staff is using 50% of our prescription, is in charge of 50% of our prescriptions, really driven from specialty pharmaceuticals. So those are sort of big numbers that it become difficult to try to figure out how to manage too. Our HR team does a really great job of maximizing the benefit of the health trust to our individuals. Our members, our employees are getting routine health checks and the like, all things that are incentivized through Divot. But the HR team, really led by Yulia Portman, really pushed to make sure our staff and our employees know the value of that opportunity and make sure that those things are happening. So those are sort of good to knows on the healthcare front.
What was our expenditure last year for pharmaceuticals? Roughly, ballpark it.
I think we were like 3.8,
Okay.
close between 3.5 and $4 million.
Okay. So a 10% increase is $300,000-400,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Make a note. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is really, what you're talking about is the current year. I mean, looking forward, I know Dr. Bedden has been asking about the security issues and all of that. How is that accounted for in the coming budget, if at all?
The security measures?
Yeah.
They are, we haven't heard, so they are not included
So
in the
they're
budget.
not included at this point.
Some items would be considered capital, perhaps, depending
what I was
on
gonna
what
ask.
we're discussing. But we shared a bunch of alternatives, and as Dr. Bedden asked, right? We're not seeing any direction, so I haven't included anything that I haven't been directed otherwise to do.
To Mr. Greenwood's point, however, at some point, if just as board members being able to move that along, since the last time we had a meeting, again, we've been in a kind of a standstill. We did have that one opportunity, as you know, where the information came back. We wanted them to do a better job. We want to schedule the timing of that whole thing. But as it stands right now, we're just on standby for what is the board's desire here that we can move forward with this thing. It seemed like it had a whole bunch of energy at one point in time, but other priorities seem to take hold.
True, but we're budget season.
Absolutely.
May change things dramatically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and certainly I think some of it is considered a capital that could come out of,
Did the retirement incentive yield anything, or is that
we're going to be discussing that later.
I can, or you, Tom, doesn't matter. You can go if you want.
Let's are there any other questions on the current year?
Yeah, I think that's will be coming up.
Yep. Okay, hearing none, I'll hit the button. So we will move into the budget discussion, and just want to share. I've made a sort of deviated from my original schedule in terms of looking at the department and school level budgets, and really I'm trying to focus because there's little variance at the school level and at the department level for the most part, with the exception of Dr. Ross's special education team and the budgets that fall under Mr. Gabriel in terms of teaching and learning. Those are two rather large budgets and play a much larger role in our budget process. Those two, along with labor. So I've tried to focus on the immediate, and we'll come back to the school level and the department level budgets once we get our hands around where we are with the other sections. With that, I thought I would also share, while participating in the PASBO conference the past 2 days, right, there's certainly a level of frustration on the state with regard to the timing as we've talked about and the sort of continual delay. It was expected by and large that if you weren't getting adequacy funding, the larger state increases were going to go away because they were drawing those from pots of money that they had stored away, right? So those, as we talked about in our own budget, when you do that, that money dries up and then goes away. So we're sort of anticipating that to happen. My other note here in front of me is the comment I had made earlier with regard to federal funding, right? We showed the one chart that, the federal and state funding for special education has increased $65,000 over the past 13 years, while the special education costs have increased by the millions. So hopefully that education, whatever happens in that with the Department of Education at the federal level, doesn't impact funding. This just is the last slide, last version that we've looked at. I haven't made any updates to this as we look to address both staffing questions and moving forward. So this is sort of, as I mentioned, we're evaluating special education. Dr. Ross is here participating in the finance committee and supporting those questions that could come up. And we're working to understand the impact to our current year as well as to our 25-26 budget. We're also looking at staffing based on the resignations. To Mr. Godek's in this question, I think we are at 11. Is that correct, Dr. Wilson?
As of 20 minutes ago.
Perfect.
Are they teaching positions, house supervisors, everything all inclusive, or?
They are all teaching positions.
All teaching.
Those are CEA teaching positions.
Yep.
EAFTEs, okay.
Yep.
And what was our date on that? Is it tomorrow?
It was last Friday.
Was it last Friday? Last Friday.
So that's an increase of what, 4 or 5?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's actually tomorrow, Friday.
We were originally we were at 9.
Okay, so it's only
Right.
We
more.
projected 8 at the first deadline,
Right.
and that went to 9, and at this point we're at 11.
Yeah, and I think we approved 5 so far for this year. Yeah. Have come through personnel so far. One, I'm sad to see go. He was a great guy.
Is it?
Okay.
Greg. Yeah, kids love him. They love him.
Is that the gym teacher?
Yes.
Everybody loves the gym teacher, right?
I'm telling you, that's a gym teacher and kindergarten teachers. They get all the love.
Yeah.
Right? When I die and come back, I want to be a gym teacher. Right? Not many things degrade. You get that elementary. You don't have any awkward health discussions or meetings to have. You know.
I'll tell you
Wear
what. We'll buy you a
sneakers
whistle
every
for the
day.
office. We'll buy you a whistle for the office.
You do have to teach the health class though, and there's some touchy conversations you have to have with adolescents though, Tom.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not looking to be the middle school gym teacher, Dr. Wilson. I'm going to be like the elementary gym teacher, dodgeball, run around the recess yard.
Dodgeball has been
All good stuff.
banned.
So those resignations, that is the count. Dr. Wilson met with CEA to discuss transfer requests that he had received, and we're really evaluating our enrollment projections, utilizing the survey that we had completed last spring as we look at what we can expect in 25-26 school year. Also waiting for an update from the board with regard to the Act 93 discussions. I don't know if you guys are, if that's, I guess Mr. Godekson is a part of the
Right,
Labor Relations
We
Committee.
did have one meeting, yes.
So the budget doesn't include anything other than what I had shared at the very beginning with regard to the Act 93. So if there is information to be shared, I would accept that, as I'm sure Dr. Wilson would, just so that we are understanding what's going on, or if there's any services that we need to provide that committee, just to make sure that we are moving them forward.
And the place that you put in was 3%?
Yes.
So that is currently already included in the budget,
Yes.
the 3%.
And also for support staff too, I believe, right?
Yep. Yep. Because that, as we were basing that based on the labor reports. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics informed our did and has continued to inform our assumptions in budgeting. So that is what is scheduled for this year. Okay. In some of these, we do need to, and we'll come back to it. I need assistance in making sure that we're able to push these varying discussions forward. So I appreciate that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is elementary class size. Right, this is a question that we raised and an opportunity we raised last year, as we've spoken about in every budget meeting to date. We need to be focused and planning to make sure that our structural deficit does not continue. Right, we need to find a way to rein in our costs and manage that effectively. So staffing is really the key, which is, as I shared earlier, my focus at the moment. And elementary class sizes are something that we had discussed, and I've answered a couple of different board questions as I was walking out from board members with regard to are these true savings, and I think by and large they are. I think within the elementary class sizes, there is some opportunity should the board decide to make a change. So the AR that defines it is within policy 126. These are the sort of the learnings and the planning, and it's sort of very detailed as to when we make those checks. The district typically continues. We started a little earlier this year, I think, as we spoke about, or I spoke at the last committee of the whole meeting. Althea Tomlinson's doing a really fantastic job shepherding the enrollment process. We have that billboard on Street Road advertising that enrollment is open, really creating opportunities at the elementary schools and across the district for parents to enroll their children. So she's really doing a great job at making sure that noise is in the community and that we are prepared and ready to enroll students. We nonetheless, we will miss some, and it'll come down to late in August, and parents will remember, oh, I didn't enroll my students, so I've got to go and do that. Last year we, given the turnover and the staffing challenges we had, that was a sort of monumental task. We're hopeful that this year it'll be much smoother. This just looks at, as I had surveyed, this is probably a year old, our local and county districts nearby, and what their class sizes have in it, which were sort of in the range of, by and large. This is our current class sizes based on early February data. This shows the average class size for each elementary grade, as well as the cap that it is operating under. And the idea with increasing the cap, as Dr. Best shared last year, is to really provide flexibility in managing the enrollment. As we manage and we review enrollment, once our number for a particular school goes over the cap, we need to either post for that position or we need to wait. And, if you're two students away and you have a trend that you've been picking up a student or two every week, particularly as we look at kindergarten and some of those younger grades, you don't want to wait too long because all schools are doing that. And we want to make sure we're getting the best teachers we can. So that decision gets put out pretty quickly. And the extra student to that, when you increase that cap, you get that, sort of times the number of teachers or sections in that school. So it does give you room to either wait it out and or adjust accordingly. Also, it's important to know, and I'm sure you guys both do, being longtime board members, enrollment is sort of a constant. Very few classes, as I've looked over, the past 9 months, very few classes, the numbers haven't changed, right? There's probably a handful in all of our elementary grades that the class number that exists today was the number that we started with in August. There's classes that have increased by 7 students. There's classes that have lost 4 students. So while we'd like it, and I always strive to find a math problem to solve all my problems, there's some art to this as well, and so I think the opportunity, should the board consider it, to increase class sizes does give us that opportunity to gauge that and provide a little more flexibility. This chart is.
Are we still anticipating an increase in the number of students or more kindergartners coming in regular ed into the system for next year?
Yes, I think we are anticipating an increase in elementary or in kindergarten as well. Yes.
So,
right. So the kindergarten, as you can see on this slide, right, the average kindergarten class right now is just over 21 students, or just almost 21 students. Right. So none of our class sizes, as you can see, right, exceed those caps. And that's based on the decisions that were made as we go through that year, right? I will jump ahead just for a second and ask, and sort of ask it now, and I'll ask it in 3 minutes, for us to have an executive session to be able to review class size in sort of detail in terms of actual numbers of students, as well as actual employees and staff, so that we can see that and understand what those decisions mean. And I think that would be a useful executive session if we can have one sort of off schedule, perhaps scheduled next week, that would allow us to focus on this question in particular and not have it sort of linger between meetings. So if that is something that the two of you would consider, I would appreciate being able to sort of move these forward, because I think they would help the budget dramatically.
I absolutely have nothing against that. The only issue that you will have is if you're thinking of having it as a separate piece and next week, I won't be here.
Okay. Okay.
You're gonna be traveling.
Traveling, yes.
But, still with the other 8 here, you understand, especially having been in the business for decades, what the numbers are, that you can be brought up to speed on it pretty quickly. So if we could still try to get something on the schedule, talk to Mary Alice if you would.
Sure.
And let's see, because I think this is something that needs to be done sooner rather than later. It also brings up the question, so, we have been seeing marked increases year over year in our IEPs, both sides. Any information or data coming down from the state as to whether or not they expect that to continue? So, we're at, say, 22% this year, for us to be looking at 23% or 24% next year? Or are we starting to see it trail off and maybe like, the back end of a bell curve?
So all the data that we utilize to make those trends always lag
Okay.
by a year or two, so we're not quite sure. We're finally coming out of the years that were related and connected to COVID.
Right.
So you would hope that there would start to be a balancing out as MTSS and other pre-referral interventions are really taking that. But across the state, we are seeing across the state and country, we're seeing special education numbers increase.
Yeah. Are we seeing increases in, are we continuing to see increases in the students that were elementary school age during COVID? Because we're now 5 years past. So we're now talking, I guess, kindergartners that are in 5th grade, first graders that are in 6th grade, et cetera. Are we continuing to see additions for them, or does it look like we have caught pretty much all of them?
That is a very great question that is difficult to kind of dig into the data.
Right.
I am not seeing bursts and bubbles at any particular grade level.
Okay.
The district has done a very nice job of putting interventions in place to support students as we go along. So I'm not seeing any specific data that's making me feel as though this is a group of students, we can connect it to a key piece that they were in this grade or that grade during the COVID time.
I mean, the other question is, are we starting to see success stories where students are starting to now transition out of IEPs because they have caught up, or because whatever deficiencies because of COVID or whatever took place has progressed on, like, delayed speech or social emotional, whatever have you, whatever it might be.
So I wouldn't connect that data directly to students being discharged from an IEP. What I would refer back to is the data that Mr. Rutz has presented in the past, and specifically the most recent data, where we looked at where the expectation was for data, and I believe like one of the numbers for reading was 55% was the average, and the district as a whole was hitting 83. Our numbers are above what the expectations are. So that large of a gap between like 55 and 83, I had shared at the education committee, that speaks to me that all of our students, including the students who have differences and IEPs, are making great gains.
Right.
And Dr. Ross, I think our number is closer to 25% now. Is that the most?
We were at
most current number?
24 something.
Right.
Yeah. So our to your earlier point.
We are still right around and slightly below some of the neighboring districts and counties.
Yeah.
What are we?
But it is gone up as Mr. Hartline shared, right? We were at 20, 21, 22. I think we are now crossed over the 24
I
point
believe-
something.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I'm trying to figure out
So
is, again, being a math guy like you, at some point in time, you expect to see a leveling off or a steadying of what's coming in. So if we were anticipating, 25% of our students coming in, we can base staffing and budgeting on that type of an IEP for the next group of kindergartners coming in. Especially because the sooner we evaluate them and get them, the better chance we have of transitioning them out of an IEP into regular ed, I would think.
Yes.
Do you have any data coming in projecting future costs on our outside placements?
So we monitor the placements and we monitor the costs associated. We are looking at students in general because we assess their least restrictive environment to determine what level of supports they need. And so our role is always to monitor those students to say, can we move to a lower LRE so that they can be in a less supportive and be successful? We monitor that, and as you can see by the numbers of students that we've already brought back, we've been successful with that. However, I never have a good crystal ball to look into the future of what that might be or what our students coming in might be. Because every year, we not only have the early intervention students, but we also have students who move into our district with targeted needs.
I mean, I'm just seeing, I mean, looking at the IU, I mean, seeing the cost that the IU seems to be going up more than the projected 4% that we're looking to add to our budget. So that's going to impact even more in terms of the cost in special ed besides student population going up.
Yes.
I mean, you know, obviously the goal is to give the best possible education, the most appropriate, and there's just some things that we as a district cannot do. I mean, it's just,
We follow,
you're not
you
equipped.
know, IDEA and the free and appropriate public education.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, you get students that just, they have needs and requirements that are substantial, and we have to, you know,
have to
provide
support
the
those
best, we have
needs.
to support them, we have to provide the best education for them and the best environment for them as well.
Right, so, you know, to Mr. Godexon's point, just quickly, right? The IU increased their rates for this current year, you know, between, 10 and 18%, just the rate that they're charging us. So it's a matter of rate as well as enrollment that is driving up those fees, right? And as we've talked about throughout, we are trending below budget in a positive manner with regard to students either at the IU or any other district placement. But as Dr. Ross will quickly let me know, she'll rattle off, examples where, at another school she was at, she got, 4 kids that looked like this, and that sort of blew the budget up. And I think one thing that, I'd appreciate you guys, board-wise, championing and thinking about is our use of contingency funding to measure and to perhaps we have a overall contingency amount that we typically include in a budget for the unknowns, but perhaps a special education contingency fund that we would account for, and probably not look at accounting for it within special ed, but down below in the 5,000 functions to avoid it being a cost that becomes an increase to our charter funding. So there's sort of the math that is involved in coming up with a charter tuition. It utilizes some lines, and it's based on the budget. It's not based. Charter tuition isn't based on actual numbers. If there are contingencies that we want to make, we want to then show them in that 5,000 section, which is not included in the charter tuition calculation. So those are things that we would I'd appreciate as we move forward. That being a difference, perhaps, as we talk about it, but something we need to be aware of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, I like that. It's actually kind of a smoothing type scenario. I like that. It's a good idea.
Then the other question is, are we seeing any drift of parochial school students coming into the district?
I don't. I will. I'll make a note of that, Mr. Godexon, and speak to.
As the economy tightens,
Yeah.
the cost of sending somebody out to private school could impact us as well.
Yeah.
In my department, we do see throughout the year a handful of students who come from parochial school where parents, we've offered an IEP, parents have said we're going to stay in the parochial school and then maybe something changes. That number is a very small number annually.
I was gonna say, it seems, I mean, so I'm going back to the 2009, 2010. It seems like even through that period of time, it was pretty much stable. I mean, obviously you have some minor fluctuations, but when you're dealing with, 5,500 students, you're seeing fluctuations of 40 or 50 students, it's 0.1%. Although those numbers, if they're not scattered amongst 6 schools, can affect class sizes, et cetera.
For sure.
Yeah, but I would certainly say it's probably no more than we have seen from increased enrollments in the developments that came in where the elementary school sites were.
So, and the other question that comes to mind is, do we have more kindergarten teachers than we have first grade teachers? And how does that impact, those current kindergartners moving up into first grade?
I say, yeah, because if we could get for the executive session, if we could get a number of, so Davis has 5 kindergarten sections, McDonald has 6, Willowdale has 3, so that we kind of have an idea of what the,
We can provide that, certainly.
yeah. Yes,
That's exactly what we want to be able to do.
Okay.
And,
All right.
that's exactly why I wanted to be in an exexecutive session, right? So,
That's why.
Because we had this
we can-
conversation, and we did add an FTE this year because of a numbering variation. So,
right, this current school year, we ultimately added 2 kindergarten teachers based on the enrollment at 2 different schools. So as enrollment grew, we ultimately brought on two regular ed teachers at that kindergarten level. So I think that provides an interesting sort of case as we could evaluate it.
and in the 25-26 budget, you have 1 additional position, teaching position, I think you said?
I think I'm flat on our current
On the
staff.
current, okay, I thought we had said we had 1 in there, but we're flat on what we currently have. Okay,
Right now.
right now, at this time.
Yep. Okay. So, just to look sort of quickly, this chart just shows sort of the spreadsheets that we've developed over the course of time that we use to track, and we update these on a weekly basis. And just looking sort of quickly, the enrollment numbers are our enrollment study numbers for kindergarten. You can see the differences, at each school, if you will. That blue shaded area sort of does the math by taking the potential enrollment and then dividing it by that class size. So in that top section by 25, it gives you in that school 122 divided by 25 is 4.88. We haven't found a 0.88 person yet. So we round that to 5. And that leaves, so if we had 5 teachers in that slot, if we have capacity for, we could take 3 more and be okay with the current teacher need, that number 5. Once we'd go over that, we'd be in the 6. What this chart shows is in that group, we currently have 6 teachers. So we have it covered. Should it go over an additional 3, but that's to be seen. If we jump down sort of to the bottom side, if you added 5 kids to that class and it went to 127, but the cap was increased to 26, you still wouldn't need to add a teacher. You'd still be okay with 5 teachers. And what that would do is have 2 classes of 26 and 3 classes of 25, which is the current cap number. And so those are sort of the numbers that are in play. And these aren't sort of universal, right? So what happens, they're all geographical. That's why the enrollment study was so important. And as we talked about, and I think Dr. Bedden talked about it, sort of revisiting that elementary school alignment. We know that is a hot potato, so to speak, but may be something we need to brush off and begin that work, because that's not something that is going to happen in the springtime. It's not going to be something that happens in months. That is and I'd envision it as at least a year-long process to make sure that we're doing what we need to do.
Yes, having been through one of those, it takes 9 to 12 months.
Yeah. So if that's something that we are considering, we should act on that and begin that journey. if not today, or early in the summer, to begin to get our ducks in a row, to be able to be talking about it with the community when school starts up the next year. So it's in these sort of numbers that we have the opportunity, to potentially save one staff position, just based on the numbers. And again, the numbers aren't always that close. It's not the majority, right? The majority of the time, you can't move one without creating a problem. As you can see on the other side, just based on how the numbers fall out, those classes are going to be in the smaller range. We're going to have classes that are 22, 23 kids, or 2 or 3 kids under the cap, as is shown on this other slide, right? That you're going to live more or less in that. What the opportunity for class size does is, shared again by Dr. Best last year, it really gives you the opportunity to make that decision, and really get us closer to the defined cap. Are there any questions?
Can you go back one more, that slide again?
Yep.
So really, for
that-
next year, our first graders are going to be second graders. So we're going to be looking at an average class size, if all things remain equal, of 23 with a cap of 27. Because I'm making an assumption that
It'd be actually, so this is current, right? So it'd be that kindergarten class
is now the
becoming
first
a first grade class. So
Right.
they're 21 students, right?
Right, so I'm looking
With a
at the
cap of
second grade
25.
class that's 24 and a half,
Yep.
or the first grade class that's 23 becomes the second grade class at 23 with now a cap of 27.
With a standard deviation of kids transfer in, kids transfer out,
Exactly.
whatever that is.
That's what I'm saying, with all things being held equal. Right,
Yep.
okay. All right, thank you.
It's also assuming that there's no more sections in each building.
Yes, because if we get a flux of students in that grade,
Right.
then it would trigger to this conversation that we're having now, the need for additional staff. To Mr. Greenwood's point, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's what I'm assuming, if there are more kindergarten sections than there are first grade sections, so therefore that would trigger another need for a first grade.
Oh, I'm sorry, we went back to kindergarten.
Yeah, so, but,
Doesn't matter where that section
Right.
is. If there's one more section in the previous grade, they move up and it's not there.
right, with the exception of when you go from a cap increase also. So you go from
Right.
25 to 7 or 27 to 20.
When you go from first to second, to Mr. Hartline's point, right, you're picking up potentially 2 for every teacher.
Right.
So if you have 5 teachers, that's 10 more kids in that group, right? Without adding another teacher,
Right,
Conversations.
in perfect pure cap numbers.
Right.
I feel like Howie Roseman.
yeah, really. I'll take his budget, though.
You and I both.
So welcoming that conversation to Mr. Greenwood's point, that we certainly could have if you guys are interested in, that examining the caps, to what Dr. Best had pointed out in the previous year and kind of what we're talking about here, could potentially provide some relief in that it may not hit our automatic trigger,
Right.
but ultimately not create, there's a concern about class size going up, but this is talking about moving the cap.
The other thing too is at what point do we start to run out of physical capacity, classroom spacing in these schools? I know that, we do have, the IU comes in and rents some space from us, et cetera, but at some point in time, if we are adding additional sections, our students take priority over our renters.
Agreed, and as you know, that we have already, in several of our schools, we had the IU program, and this year there are fewer IU programs utilizing our space than was previous year.
Yeah.
Right? So every year that needs to be examined, because the taxpaying public, we need to be able to educate our children and have our space for that. So that's reevaluated every year. And we have those ongoing conversations with Mark Hoffman at the IU annually.
With some changes hopefully taking place on the state level, the IUs may be able to open education centers, bless you, additionally, but
Well, I mean, as I mentioned on Tuesday, they are getting a new school
Right.
for next school year. And I do believe that they're taking the two preschoolers that's at Davis, they are also moving them to a different location.
So I actually spoke with Dr. Hoffman yesterday on that topic, and they're looking to make those moves. So we're talking across the district about when they can move, how quickly, and making sure that they have a soft landing, because no matter what, those students are going to be our students. They're Centennial students.
Good, okay. Yeah, I think, but if we're renting space, that's a loss of revenue if we're no longer renting spaces too. So we need to keep that into account as well.
Yep. Okay. So as I said, promised I would repeat it again. I think if we could get some movement on an executive session to be able to just walk through this topic and then sort of yay or nay it and allow us to be able to move on. I don't think it's not saving you $4 million, but it is, each teacher comes with a price tag, and that is a decent number.
Yeah.
So you may find an opportunity that you can save, 1, 2, or 3 teachers, and I think that's sort of the area you're playing in, right? It's not gonna change the world, but it will change our planning going forward, which is really what we need to be trying to figure out how to do.
Well, as
Okay.
I said,
Agreed.
we agree that we should put it up for an exec session.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you both for that. And maybe we'll tag on that the idea of high school scheduling. That is something that is more complex than the elementary scheduling, but it's something and will therefore take more time. That was raised and discussed last summer. But if that's something that has juice within the board, that is something we can continue to evaluate. But that's not going to happen for the 25-26 budget. I think it needs, it took over a year probably to bring block scheduling to Centennial. If you return to a more traditional scheduling, it could take a year to reverse that process. So guidance from the...
I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead, Brian.
And yes, it does take a while, but in the prerequisite of that is even determining that evaluation to even determine the practicality, of that transition from block to traditional, making sure that we don't participate in exercise of futility. If work to get us something, and if it's minuscule or doesn't get us anything, we would consider that, because that's a lot of effort. But to Mr. Greenwood's point, possibly a good idea to roll that into a conversation during that extended executive.
Oh, no, yeah, it's.
Okay. Any other questions with regard to the budget or to this planning?
I do not. Anyone else?
Okay.
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you for, there was a beneficial discussion and dialogue, so I appreciate the support there. Looking at the insurance broker RFP, the RFP was sent out. We received responses from 4 agencies. The last time we did this, we received a response from 7 agencies. The 4 that responded are listed below. The first one, our RFP calls out that we pay a fee to the broker, and that the broker foregoes any other commissions. so that we get sort of as close to a apples to apple comparison as could be. The first Caputo did not separate out the fee and would sort of be disqualified from the RFP process. Worthy's annual fee was twice that of the incumbent Willis, as well as USI. They are charging in the neighborhood of 31, 32, 33,000. Worthy's was a $65,000 annual fee, increasing 3% a year. So very quickly, I think we're down to two. And would like your collective thoughts. I can share the agreements for your review and sort of a scoring rubric. We can have those two. We can invite them in. When we'd all be available for sort of a 20-minute presentation, 5-minute question window, and sort of utilize an hour of everyone's time to hear from those what I see as almost two viable alternatives.
I think
Any
that's,
feedback?
I think that's a good idea. I agree. I mean, I'm not surprised we got less respondents. I understand that it's getting tighter in some of this stuff, but it's certainly worth them coming in and giving us their show.
Yep.
And I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this is
I
something
will.
when is our expiration of our current policy?
June 30th.
June 30th as well.
So,
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I will reach out and see if I can't get some dates. Mr. Godekson, you said you were away next week. Are you on a long trip or a shorter trip?
18 to the 25th. I'm not sure if I'm going to make the next board meeting, but I'm coming home
Okay.
on the 25th.
Okay. So I
If you have
will.
a good tailwind, you'll be here.
I will reach out
Actually, I'm coming with
to.
the wind, so it should be possible.
Yeah, I will have.
But I'm also
Donna.
gone from April 24th to May 7th.
But you'll be here for the next finance meeting.
As long as it doesn't fall between.
No, it's going to be like April 14th.
Yeah.
13th, something like that.
Yeah.
So I will, Mr. Hahn, I will reach out to you as well, but maybe we'll look for a date after the 25th, maybe that 26th, 27th window to schedule that dog and pony show, if you will.
I can tell you
So maybe
the 27th is not going to work because we are looking at superintendent applications.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The following week does seem to be pretty well open. But they would probably
week
want to
of
come
the
in during the
31st?
day, though.
What's that?
I would say they would want to come in during the day, I would think.
Yeah. Yep.
So it'd be
Yep.
the day of the 27th. Yeah, then, yeah.
I'm okay with that.
I mean, I would imagine that they would come anytime you have time, right?
Right.
No,
I would imagine
in
their
that-
first pick would be a day,
In
but
that case, the 27th is okay with me.
Right. Yeah, as long as it's a daytime.
yeah, okay. So, I'll look at those. Mr. Harlan, if you can look at your calendar and let me know.
Yeah, I was just checking it. It seems like those dates look good.
Okay.
Send a
So
reminder
I
out
will-
to Mr. Martin and to see if he has a preference, whether or not.
Yeah, I will ask Donna to reach out to those two companies and schedule that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And we'll have our typical monthly informational reports, and I think that's all I have. We don't have anything for approval. The rarity as we get closer to the end of the year, I'm sure we'll be having RFPs and contracts that we'll be moving forward. So, are there any questions?
No.
I do not see any.
Okay. Well, thank you both for your time today.
Thank you too. Safe travels there.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not much of a traveler. I'm a homebody, so I look forward to being back at home.
So that's why you forego going to Florida, right? And you let her.
Unless I'm bringing my golf clubs,
There you go.
you know.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
right.
Seeing nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Approved.
All right. We're out of here. Again, safe travels, sir.
Catch you later, Tom.
Thank you. Thank
See ya.
you all. I appreciate
Enjoy
it.
it out there.
Take care.
Bye.